you're just giving the government money. With just a little bit of work and a little bit of planning, you can keep a lot more of your money. And there's so many strategies to do that.
Welcome to Thoughtful Money. I'm Thoughtful Money founder and your host, Adam Taggart. We're here to talk about a very important and very timely topic, which is end-of-year financial planning. It's something that everybody should do. And quite honestly, most people don't really ever get around to doing. So even if you've had a really good year in the markets, like I think many people have had this year in 2024, not doing effective end-of-year planning is kind of like fumbling the football on the goal line. Right, it's just such an unnecessary thing when you really want to, end the year strong, right? Especially if you've done well all year, and even if the year didn't go well for you, you want to make sure that you're setting things up as best as possible for a maximum opportunity in 2025. So, anyways, to talk about exactly what year-end planning is, to demystify it, to share with you the steps that every investor should be considering at this time of year. I've been very fortunate in being able to get two of the great minds at Real Investment Advice to join us. Real Investment Advice is one of the financial advisory firms endorsed by Thoughtful Money. It's Lance Roberts' firm. So if you watch this channel, you see Lance with me here week after week. We're joined by two of his colleagues, quite honestly, the smarter and better looking colleagues there at RIA. And I'm talking specifically about Richard Rosso and Danny Ratliff. Richard and Danny, how are you guys?
We're good. Yeah, we're good. We're happy to be with you today, just to help people, look at what RIA is. And I know we've talked about this before, Adam, but we're very holistic in how we approach things. Lance is, I think, one of the best investment strategists out there. Michael Leibowitz, I think, is one of the best Fed analysts out there. But, it's like having, when you're just focused on the portfolio, it's like one layer in a multi-layer cake. So there are a lot of other financial decisions you need to make. So that's where Danny and I and our team come in to sort of help people look at their money holistically. And I think that that's very important for our firm overall.
Fantastic.
I agree.
Danny,
Adam, thank you for that great intro. I'm going to put that on a loop in the studio. So every time Lance walks in, he's going to hear that.
Great.
So much
Just
appreciated.
make sure the volume goes up whenever he walks into the room. Yeah,
That'd be fun.
Absolutely. But no, this is such an important part that is so overlooked because we get so caught up in the day-to-day market minutia of what's going on that, it's very easy to overlook these small things that can be done. And so I think this is extremely timely heading into the year end. Still have a month and a half to make some of these moves and make sure you're not leaving any benefits on the table. Some of these you can do if you're a small business owner. Some are going to be if you're employed by somebody. But many times they're either overlooked or just not used at all. And so we really want to bring to light those simple strategies that can help any and everybody.
All right, great. Well, look, let's just roll up our sleeves and start diving in. Real quickly, I just want to give viewers a little bit of grounding. So, Lance mentions this quite frequently on the channel, but he talks about how the team at RIA has been built, right? And his job and Michael Leibowitz's job is first and foremost to figure out how to manage the portfolios, right? That's their strengths, their superpowers. Danny, you and Richard here, your guys' superpowers is on the financial planning side. So you're the ones who are actually really talking with clients and saying, okay, let's talk about your personal situation, your goals, your aspirations, your risk tolerance and whatnot. And then how does that translate into a strategy that then we can direct our portfolio managers to try to help achieve for you? Did I get that right?
You did. Yeah. We try to help clients figure out what their personal financial benchmark is, what kind of return do they need to hit life goals, and then we hopefully exceed those over time. So the goal is not always to beat an index, it's to beat your life index or at least meet it so that you're hitting the goals. And everybody's plan is so very different in how they approach things. Their money scripts are different, their money personalities. So yes, it's very important what Lance and Michael do to stay proactive and follow rules. And then on our side, we do the same. We try to make sure that people understand that we're here for them, not Wall Street. And some of the dogma that gets promoted out there from the financial planning perspective has been out there since the 90s and never changed. So we are always sort of cutting edge academically at looking at these things so that clients get a realistic, or pragmatic picture of, what the expectation should be. So I would say the first thing we always want to try to help people understand is you better get your head on straight. And what I mean by that is I think that's a year-round exercise. You mentioned it earlier with the markets doing it so well as it's done and so complacent as it's been. People really need to reset their expectations emotionally about what they think next year is going to bring. So on your checklist is an emotional kind of, where am I? How do I restructure back to my beacon of what my portfolio should look like versus what I emotionally did to it? And I mean, like, oh my gosh, I'm all in tech stocks, or I'm overweight stocks, and my risk attitude is, changing now because of the election, and you don't want to do that. So part of our job is psychologists. And it's a year-end thing, but it's also to set expectations, but it's a year-round exercise to make sure that you understand that next year may be different than this year. And that's why you got to focus on whatever your return or benchmark is to hit, and not how great you've done this year. And most people have, but they always think that they're going to extrapolate that into next year. And Danny and I have to make sure people understand that they got to get their head on straight, and may not be the case next year. And that's
Yeah,
something
I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is something I've been mentioning a lot in my conversations with Lance, which is people have recency bias, right? So
big
your
time, big
team
time.
wins
Yeah.
the Super Bowl, you're super excited. They win
Yeah.
it the next year, you're very excited. Now you're expecting them to win it for a third year. Now, almost no team ever does that. And even if they make the playoffs, but don't actually get the Super Bowl ring, you're disappointed because you were all in that they were going to somehow three-peat, right? And investors have had two really big years in the markets. So I imagine now a big part of your work is just trying to temper people's expectations, which is, yeah, you've had a great run in the market, but don't necessarily expect that third Super Bowl in a row.
Right. Be cautious. Understand that depending upon where you are, we break out between accumulators and decumulators, right? So most of the financial industry, as Danny and I will help you understand, is it's always focused on accumulation, saving money, saving taxes, all these wonderful things. But the other side of it is I also have to take money out of my accounts. I need retirement income strategies. And a lot of advisors, frankly, they don't care about that. They care if they apply the same accumulation strategies to retirement strategies. So years ago, there used to be a show out there called Tool Time with Tim Allen and Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And what Danny and I try to say is you're once Tim Allen and you have the kids, and you're looking over at Wilson over the fence, and Wilson's looking out over you over there. Wilson's goals and your goals could be very different. So we really look at pre-retirees and retirees. I mean, yeah, or really early accumulators, and say, their strategies are going to be different. So some of this year-end checklist is really good for possibly your retirees or about to be retired as well. So we look at both sides. We look at Wilson. We don't want to ignore Wilson and just focus on Tim Allen, his wife, and his kids. We try to be holistic that way, and there's a different set of strategies that go along with that.
All right. Well, look, why don't we just get to the point where the rubber meets the road here? So somebody comes in, or one of the viewers watching this channel says, "Hey, I want to talk to these guys. I want to do this year-end planning." They fill out the form there at thoughtfulmoney.com. You guys reach out to them. You schedule a time to chat. Walk me through how you would walk them through the year-end planning process.
Why don't you go ahead, Danny?
Well, I think it's going to vary for each and every person, because everybody's going to have a different set of rules or guidelines that we can operate by. And so it really takes getting to know somebody. So the more open that a potential prospect or client can be, the better, because as we do a plan, as we tell people, look, if we get garbage in, garbage is going to come out. And so it's really a detailed analysis. We take an inventory of assets. We get a very good understanding of where they're employed, or do they own their own business? What type of strategies are they already employing? And then from there, we can begin to dissect and break down exactly what, they may be able to do better, what they're doing very well. And we talk to plenty of people that are doing an excellent job, but we try to find those things that just not everybody's thinking about. And sometimes it's things that we may be doing already, but we're not taking full advantage of it. And so there's a hierarchy of savings. We talk a lot about this as far as where do we put our funds? How do we fund these different types of investment vehicles? and what should you be using for the goals and objectives that you have. And so for everybody, it's a little bit different. You know, Adam, we've told people with $500,000 they can retire. I've told people at 50 million that they can't. So the number is so broad and vast, because if you can remember those old Fidelity commercials, Boyd, I think used to have one as well. And it's, you know, Fidelity's most recent is they have that green line, the arrow that you follow, and it's going to tell you exactly what you need to reach your retirement goals, but they're always moving. I can't tell you one specific client that I've been working with that is, we built a plan and it's been static or just stagnant. It's always changing a little bit over time. There's a fork in the road, a life event occurs, they may want to make a change, or as they're continuing to accumulate, they switch jobs, they start a business. And so now we're going to have to determine which is the best route to go. Now that financial plan will help, and these tips are things that I think that not everyone's going to pertain to each person, but I feel like that there's going to be a handful that somebody's going to be able to take away from this, that's going to be impactful thinking about year-end planning. And so if somebody calls in, Adam, we're going to talk through kind of the scenario, what they're currently doing, how they're doing it, and then we're going to begin to break it down piece by piece.
And Danny brings this up, the financial hierarchy of savings. I met with new clients the other day, and they're just in the process of their plan, and I'm putting the words goal scooping in their vocabulary. And what I mean by that is, they might have goals: buy a new car, fix the kitchen, all this stuff for 2026, 2027. They've done so well this year. I'm pulling those goals into the present from the future. In other words, I'm freeing up money now. Can you renovate that kitchen next year? Can we move things up because the markets and your timelines and your, you know, what you've done has been so good? So what you have to think about is, are there goals and things that you need to fund as you rebalance your portfolio? Don't right away maybe put it back into the portfolio. Have you won? Are there goals that you have next year and the year after that you can take advantage of next year and pull them ahead because of how well you've done? So understanding your goals and then scooping them up and doing them sooner might be something you want to consider because of how well you've done. And you may not get that chance in 2 years, but you do now. So you've got to think about what you're going to do with the cash. The other thing is, Danny and I, we always recommend at RIA that households maintain an FVC. That's a financial vulnerability cushion. So right before the pandemic, Danny and I started talking about this on the radio show. The first 6 months of living expenses are an adequate emergency reserve for anything unexpected, right? I got to fix the air conditioner. I got auto repair. But what about an additional 6 months of savings in case of a significant life event, extended unemployment, or other outliers that are going to put your households in financial jeopardy? So maybe you haven't done that. You've been so excited about stocks and variable assets that you have forgotten the basics. And so we will say, hey, by the way, your money tip for your year end is, how's your financial vulnerability cushion? Are you replenished that? So not only are you going to goal scoop to do that, you might sell off some assets and put that money in cash because you do need to replenish that. You have Marcus, Synchrony, Ally, all these great FDIC insured online banks that are there. And we know, Adam, you talk about this a lot, the Fed's not going to rush out and lower rates. There's absolutely no reason to. So you're still getting decent rates on cash. It's not zero, and it's probably not going to zero. So yeah, I know cash is boring. I know cash is not Microsoft, but that's not the goal. The goal is to make sure that you're goal scooping and you're replenishing that financial vulnerability cushion. Not only the 6 months of savings, but what if something else happens? So having 12 months of your living expenses in cash reserved is very important for us to establish with people.
All right.
Yeah, I think
this.
those. Go ahead, Adam. I wanted to elaborate real quick if I got just a second.
Yeah. No, elaborate. And I'll then pile on.
So one thing I do want to bring up, though, for goal scooping, Richard's mentioning is you can move these funds from certain accounts to other accounts. If you're going to go ahead and liquidate, equities at higher prices, keep in mind, we also want to think about the tax efficiency of that. So you may not want to add on additional taxes. You can do that inside of your retirement account. Go find a money market fund or go find a stable value fund in your 401k at work. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to pull those funds out now. That's going to take some additional planning to determine, especially if you are at retirement age or near 65. We have to think about IRMA charges for Medicare. We have to think about additional taxation and potentially, you know, where you live as well, your state income tax. So this needs to be thoughtful. What we're really talking about right now, without knowing each and everybody's situation, is just going ahead and freeing things up. And you know what? The other thing you could do is, if you know that that goal is not going to come until July, go buy a 6-month CD. Go find something that you can do that gets you a little bit more return. So there's lots of different avenues and ways to look at this. I just want to make sure that everybody does understand that doesn't mean you necessarily have to take it out of the account, because we do want to think about the tax burden that comes with that as well.
All right, good clarification. I'm going to ask you about tax selling in just a second. But I love this concept of goal scooping, and you know, it's really important to keep in mind, and I've been saying this more often on this channel, where the goal is not to die atop a big pile of cash, right? The goal, the mission for why I created Thoughtful Money was to help improve people's odds of funding their life's goals, right? What are the things you want to do in life? Okay, great. How can we help you get there? And one of the things I know you guys do, you've already alluded to pretty heavily here, is you get real specific with people and helping identify their goals and then a plan to get there. So it's not about, okay, a new year starting, I want to beat the S&P this year, right? That's just an arbitrary, you know, objective you're putting out there, and it may cause you to take on way more risk than you need to hit the goals that you care about. So your job is basically to help clarify the goals and then help people find the best path on a risk reward basis to get there. And then once they're there, yeah, realize that goal. If you can afford to remodel that kitchen today without impacting your other goals, great, do it. That's a boon to you. You get to enjoy that sooner. And you know, if you have something happen 2 or 3 years down the road, that if you'd waited too long, that goal might have passed you by, right? So you guys are making it really practical for people.
Right. And to Danny's point, you just might want to say, hey, this money's in my IRA. Now, again, we don't know what's going to happen with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, right? This is a precarious situation. Is it going to be extended or not? We do planning, assuming it is, but we also do all the plans, assuming it's not. But either way, you can go ahead and put that money aside in your IRA and say, this is money that I'm going to have to do what I need to do because I'm front loading my goals as well. But we also have people taking money out of IRAs. And why? Danny and I started probably talking about this before it got sexy, but Roth conversions, surgical Roth conversions, or pulling money out of IRAs to move into Roth has become the hot thing. We've been doing it for years before it became a hot thing, close to 7 years now. So when you look at this, you have to consider the fact, do you think long-term taxes are going higher or lower? And you know this better than anybody, Adam, with where our deficits are right now. How in heck can taxes go lower? Unless we really extremely blow out the growth rate, but demographics, right, don't pretend to that in productivity. So you got to look at the fact that even when you're retired and you're Wilson, you may not be falling into the lowest tax bracket. That's another 90s bullcrap story that we've been getting for a long time, right? So Social Security, Medicare premium triggers, the 3.8% net investment income surtax. When people are between, say, 65 to 75, they're in their active years of retirement, they're spending money. Anything they take money out of their accounts for in their IRAs is taxable income. So as much as we talk about diversification of assets, you must diversify your accounts. So at a year-end checklist, either you're going to look at doing surgical Roth conversions where you're pulling money out of an IRA and into Roth, and we have to run the numbers to make sure, or you're going to max out your Roth 401k at work. You're going to start maybe a Roth IRA, because the whole world is always, and CPAs, nothing against them, but they're always worried about you saving taxes now. But you have to remember that many times retirees do not fall into the lowest tax bracket anymore. And that's when Roth conversions pay off. They pay off also because of how, say, Adam, you want to leave your IRA to your child. Mm-hmm. Well, that child used to have the ability to take it out over their life expectancy. They don't have that ability anymore. They have to do it over a 10-year period. Thus, you're putting them possibly in a precarious tax situation. So Roths have become a great legacy asset as well. So some of the advice we will provide is, why should I do Roth? We run the numbers to show you that maybe you should be doing Roth conversions. And Danny, how busy are we with Roth conversions now towards the end of the year with clients that have definitely bought
Oh,
into
you
this?
hear
And
you hear
done
both of our voices, Adam. It's been a crazy time of year in general. So yeah.
All right. And so guys, great point. Let me just make sure the whole audience is following along. I think most people understand the difference between a traditional IRA and a Roth, but very quickly, traditional IRA is tax deferred. So you put money in it today, pre-tax money in it today, that grows tax deferred. But when you start making withdrawals in the future, that's taxed as regular income. The Roth is sort of the other way around, where you're putting post-tax dollars into it today, that grows tax-free. And when you withdraw at some point in the future, those withdrawals are tax-free. Did I get that correct?
You did. Keep in mind,
Correct.
President-elect Trump brought this up about no taxes on Social Security. You know how many calls I got from people that are not clients that said, I didn't even know I get taxed on Social Security. Yeah, you do. Roth doesn't. People don't realize there are these backdoor taxes, surcharges on Medicare premiums, Social Security taxes that will take your marginal tax rate and increase it. And our job is to look at that total tax rate and figure out, is it worth it for you to do Roth conversions over a period of time so that you have multiple accounts to draw money from. So say Wilson needs to buy a new car and he's got himself a young girlfriend. He wants to spend $100,000 on a car. He calls Danny and goes, Danny, I would take, forget this fence thing. I got a Ferrari and a 27-year-old girlfriend, and Tim Allen is all freaking out. But guess what? Danny's got to tell him he's got to take $100,000 out of his IRA, tax his ordinary income, thus possibly increasing his Medicare premiums in the next couple of years, and increasing his taxation on Social Security. What if he could take $100,000 by doing $50,000 out of his Roth and $50,000 out of his IRA, and tax, looking at it from a tax efficient manner, so he's not getting destroyed on taxes, right? When the 90s, and I understand we've had great market, you've had this tax deferred compounding snowball that has paid off. Thus, people have put all their money in. And then when I first started in this business, people did fall into the lowest tax bracket. Social Security wasn't always taxed. It worked, right? Now it's so different. So this diversification of accounts, having some money in Roth, having some money in pre-tax, having some money in a plain vanilla brokerage account allows you to craft a retirement income that's very tax friendly, but not just for federal tax, for Social Security tax and Medicare IRMA charges, as we call them. So surgical Roth conversion towards the end of the year, or examining the ability to do some Roths over time, especially if you want to leave money behind to heirs, non-spouse, especially today, is important. And it's even though tax brackets might change, like say the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act does not sunset, it's still worth it to do Roth conversions. Matter of fact, you'll have a longer period of time because of generous 22 and 24% marginal rates to do those conversions over longer years, more years. So it's even more of a reason to look at it and have your accountant and your financial advisor run the numbers to see if it works. Danny, how many times do we run these analyses and show that over a client's lifetime, they save what? Maybe $300,000 in taxes over their lifetime. They have $500,000 more in assets to leave behind. Even though it hurts in the beginning because you have to pay the taxes up front, we try to do the projections out to show you that Roth conversion may work. At year end, that might be something worth it, but you're running out of time. So maybe you're looking at tax planning for next year to decide whether or not you're going to even put Roth into your vocabulary. And that's important.
Well, I think everybody needs to know what their break-even point is as far as when it makes sense for them. And you're going to have to live to a certain amount of time, or your longevity has to be so long for this to really make sense. Now, you alluded to it earlier, the legacy intent, I think, is huge, right? If you wanted to give money to kids, what better way, if you are in a lower tax bracket, to do so very strategically? And then when, if you pass, they may be in their 50s or 60s, and they may be making the most they've ever made. Now these funds, especially with the 10-year rule on inherited IRAs for non-spousal beneficiaries, you have to take those funds out within that 10-year window. And so you may pay quite a bit more in taxes, especially if this government continues to spend money the way that they do. Who's going to pay the burden on that? Well, we all are. So now we've got to start thinking in that manner. I know there's a lot of talk right now that Trump is going to get this, President-elect Trump's going to be able to get this permanent, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. But what if it's not? And what if the pendulum swings the other way and they're going to need money again somewhere down the road, and we do see higher taxes? It could be additional means testing on Social Security or Medicare. All those things are things we need to think about, and there's so many pieces to the puzzle. I do see, though, and Rich, you see it occasionally too, where Roth conversion just doesn't make sense. And so it is not for everybody. In fact, I see that, many times if there's not that legacy intent, or they don't intend to, they don't have a long lifespan, then yeah, it's not for everybody. But it is something I think that you should pursue and look at. We typically do like to wait towards the end of the year, because with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, if we do a Roth conversion, we can no longer recharacterize it. And what that means is, if you said, okay, I'm ready to do a $50,000 conversion, and you may call in January, say, shoot, hey guys, I did $25,000 too much. I didn't calculate this additional income. It put me up into this next bracket, or it triggered something else. Well, we cannot go back and put those funds back into a traditional IRA. So end of year planning for this type of thing, I think, is really important, because we don't typically want to do that in, say, January, February. We want to get a very good idea as far as what your full year of income looks like. And then we can more accurately project what that may or may not be. And so keep in mind that when we're doing so, and you may be listening to this in January, I would still encourage you to wait towards the end of the year. Make sure you have a very good idea as far as what that income is, because you don't want to mess this up. Okay.
So a couple important things just to underscore. One is, we're recording this in mid-November. And so folks don't have a ton of time left, right? So I just want to underscore for folks, if you're thinking, hey, tax year-end planning is something I need to really get cracking on, do it soon, because, hey, Thanksgiving's going to be here next week. Then you're only going to have a couple of weeks before the winter holidays are on top of us. The family's going to start arriving. Obviously, work, there's a lot of wrap-up stuff you have to do in those last couple of weeks. It gets very easy to get overwhelmed. And then all of a sudden, people are trying to call you, 48 hours before New Year's. And there's only so much you guys can do with that limited time. So again, folks, time is of the essence here. All right. Secondly, just to make sure folks are really clear, you guys have sort of mentioned this, but I just want to make sure it's super clear to folks. When you're doing one of these Roth conversions that you guys have been mentioning, you're taking money that's been in a traditional IRA, and then you're moving that into a Roth. And when you do that, that is a taxable event. If you put a bunch of money in a traditional IRA, you're going to be paying taxes on it today to get it into the Roth. Now, again, this is why this becomes such an important math exercise. Given the long-term tax-free withdrawal benefits and tax-free growth benefits, that may very well be the right thing to do, but you really want to make sure you get your numbers right. So that's why working with a professional like you, getting your accountant involved, will be really helpful.
It is. You got to keep in mind, like I have a client that looks at December, how much income he's had, and he can't move. We don't want to move him into a higher bracket. We want to just fill up his marginal tax rate, right? And now, because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the 22 and 24% marginal rates are pretty wide. So this year we can only convert like $12,000. So
okay.
He knows.
And Richard, sorry, let me just ask this to make sure it's clear. It's not an all or nothing. Like, I get to take everything that's in this traditional IRA Roth. I can just take a select amount, and I can keep doing that year after year, right?
Yeah, we don't call it the machete Roth conversion, right? We're not chopping at your account. We're calling it surgical, right?
Okay, yeah.
I have some clients that'll only move $5,000, $6,000 a year because that's all they can do, but they're building up slowly that Roth, and a lot of times it's for legacy intent. Now, also, you want to make sure you're paying your taxes from an outside source. So I have a client that'll pay $10,000 to move $10,000 from his IRA to his Roth, but he's got the taxes outside to pay for it. So the entire $10,000 moves into that Roth.
Got it. All right, makes sense. Okay, so yeah, and so folks, this is like the vision I have in my mind here during this whole process is it's like a conductor. That's what Danny and Richard are, where you have all these different potential options, all these different instruments. You want to recruit them so that you're using the right instrument at the right time to do the right thing for your wealth goals. So you might say, yeah, we need a little more flute right now, right? All right, we're going to take a little bit of money from that traditional IRA. We're going to put it over here, but you're making it all work together in concert. All right, so you guys talked about earlier about, having to take into account the tax implications of selling. Obviously, that applies here with the Roth conversions, but that applies on a larger basis with just, hey, it's 2024, markets had a great year. Do I want to start realizing some of these gains, right? Or do I have some dogs in my portfolio that I might just want to sell now before the end of the year so I can apply those
Right.
losses to reducing my taxable gains? This is a
Right.
big part of year-end planning, right?
It is tax harvesting. The problem is, what are you harvesting? It's like,
Meaning
it's
gains or
been very
losses or
hard
what?
for us.
Yeah.
No, but you might have losses that you can offset against gains. That's a point, yes. But perhaps you're more comfortable with a 40% allocation to equities, especially in your retirement account. Now you let it ride and you're at 67. So it's a good time now to get it back into balance.
To rebalance, which Lance talks about all
Yes.
the time. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah,
I
that goes
mean,
back to
that's
your
how you're gonna
recency
hurt.
bias. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's the challenge, is that rebalance. But another thing that we've done in the past, Adam, when you have a year where maybe things aren't as good, you may still have a high conviction in a specific investment, but you could go ahead and sell it, wait that 30 days to avoid a wash rule, and then you can get back in, or you could buy something similar. And so sometimes we'll look at that because we need that for a carry forward loss. So a big question that we often ask people, especially if it's a new client coming on, is, hey, do you have any carry forward losses? Ask your CPA what you've been using, because I find oftentimes everybody that many people I talk to, and really, really smart people, will tell me, hey, I can only use $3,000 of that every year. I'm like, no. We can use that to offset your gains, and then you can apply an additional $3,000 on top of that to decrease your overall tax burden. And then anything in addition to that, you carry forward to the following year. And so there is a strategy around that. And that's a great point, Adam.
Hey, I just want to define for folks a term you used there, which was wash sale, which is, so I think in the case you were talking about it, Danny, let's say I've got a stock that had a bad year, but I believe in it, right? I like this stock. I want it in my portfolio for the long haul. You can sell it at the end of the year, clock the loss to use to offset other gains. And then as long as you wait 30 days, you can then buy that stock back, right? So it's back in your portfolio, but you also got to deduct the losses. If you don't wait the 30 days, it's what's the authorities call a wash sale, where they basically say, you know what, you're kind of in and out of this thing too quickly. It's almost as if they treat it as if you didn't sell it, and therefore you wouldn't be able to get those, you wouldn't be able to deduct those gains, or those losses, I mean. So if you haven't heard of the loss sale before, I wanted to make sure you knew what it was, but also just know that there are all these things out there that if you know the rules of the game, you can use all this to your advantage to, in some cases, almost kind of get your cake and eat it too. Now, of course, the risk of the wash sale is the stock moves like crazy in the 30 days that you're not owning it, but that happens relatively rarely, right? So again, working with experts like these guys, they can give you all these options. So like that conductor, you can make them all work together to kind of get the best possible concert out of it.
Yep.
All right.
Go ahead. Do you have another with, you also want to just look at your accounts, right? You have a flexible spending account. You got to make sure you're spending it down, make sure you can move. Those are assets that you're using for healthcare expenses, right? So what you want to try to do, if you're using a pre-tax account to pay your healthcare expense, like a flexible spending account, how much did you have in healthcare expense? Do you have overage? What is it going to look like next year, right? How are you going to gauge maybe what kind of annual healthcare expenses you have? Every year I go to the eye doctor. Every year I do this. Okay, well then make sure you're not overfunding it, but you may have money in your flexible spending account. You got to use it or lose it. You might get a few more months to lose it, but you will lose it. So you want to make sure you're using that money that's in these pre-tax accounts that you're saving, that are called spending accounts, not health savings accounts, but flexible spending accounts. You want to make sure you're getting that in. And a lot of people who do that. I talk to Danny, probably does too, clients who are doctors, like, oh my gosh, everybody's using their flexible spending dollars right now.
Yeah.
They're bunching it up and trying to do it, but it's important because you don't want to lose it.
Well, it's important. You don't want to lose it. And again, I think like it's a great example, flexible spending account. A lot of people know what they are. A lot of people will use it if it's made available, perhaps through, say, work, but they don't realize that they can just go out and get one on their own if they want. And again, this is some of the planning for the next year that you help people do, right? A lot of what you do is, hey, what can we get done before the end of the year? But let's say you're talking to somebody and they don't have a flexible spending account, and you can say, okay, great. Well, how much do you normally spend on health-related costs during the year? Well, maybe you should put X amount of your pre-tax dollars into one of these accounts, and then you'll actually be better off next year.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of accounts that you want to look at. There's nothing wrong with tax deferred accounts if they're not all where you put your money. There are we work with a lot of clients that are really healthy at how much they're putting into their 401ks and so forth in their pre-tax retirement accounts. So maybe you haven't done enough this year. Maybe you're going to be getting a bonus. Maybe you can amp that up a little bit depending on what your taxes are going to be. So this is a good time to top off a lot of those more tax favorable accounts that you haven't done. But you also want to look at tax planning for the new year, because interestingly enough, if you are going to be, now generally speaking, when you're 50 or 59, you get your, say your 401k limits, you get enhanced what we call catch-up contributions, right? So I could do 2025, 50 to 59 or 64 and older, I could do 23,500. That's my annual deferral limit. Then I get a $7,500 catch-up contribution. So my total 2025 annual contribution is 31,000, but don't ask me why. I have no idea. But through the Secure Act, the ages 60, 61, 62, 63 have a special catch-up contribution next year of 11,250. Thus, your total 2025 annual contribution is 34,750. So you may not realize that you can bolster your catch-up contribution for a period of time. And if that's what you want to do, right, they could do it. And once participants turn 64, they revert back to the standard age 50 plus catch-up contribution limit. But for a period of time, age 60 to 63, 60, 61, 62, 63, I can bolster what I'm putting away in my pre-tax accounts if I choose to do so. And just, you may want to prepare for that next year to say, oh, I could put more in. Maybe I need to readjust my budget, look at my spending for next year. So it's a good time to budget for next year already.
One thing that I'm concerned about and that we've seen in the past is that these 401k providers are not, there may be a little antiquated or technology hasn't caught up to it. So you may have to physically call in because you may not see that on your screen. It may show just the regular catch-up provision. Like, here's how much you funded, here's how much additional you have. So if you are between those ages, I would reach out to them if it doesn't automatically show that from what you can contribute when you log into your 401k, because they may have to turn something on for you. They may have just not caught up to the new legislation. And then we see that from time to time.
Wow. Okay. That's great to know. So yeah, so much of this is just like, even just in this conversation, you guys have reminded me of a couple of things where I'm like, I'm not even sure I'm utilizing that as best I should. There's just so many both options, but so many sort of, special cases here and stuff like that. You kind of need somebody like you who's an expert and swims in this stuff all the time to be able to see what you're not doing.
Yeah, the Secure Act's strange. It's like drops things that you go, where'd that come from? And you have to be aware of those because it just doesn't make any kind of common sense. Okay, is there something magical between 60 and 63 that happens? There's some magic pixie dust that you're giving me. Why can't I just continue to do this extended catch-up? But no, only from here to here. So yes, we have to keep track of these changes over time so that we can communicate it to our clients and people that ask questions to us through the radio show and the website.
All right. Hey, since we're talking about retirement stuff here mostly, two questions. One is beneficiary updating. That's something that I think a lot of people just kind of forget about, right? They open their retirement account, they set their benefits, and this isn't unique to just retirement accounts, I guess. And then they, over the years, you just focus on putting money in it, but you don't really ever go back and revisit, oh, did I end up having more kids that I want to add as dependents, or did I get divorced or whatever, right? And we hear the stories about people who get divorced but don't change their beneficiaries, and all of a sudden their ex-spouse, inherits their money versus their kids. And, had they been alive and cognizant of this, they obviously would have made a different decision. You're nodding pretty vigorously as I'm saying this, Richard, but it's end of the year is a good time to revisit your beneficiaries, correct?
You see it all the time, right? Beneficiary designations on life insurance, contingent beneficiaries, making sure that everything is updated and the way you want it to be, is very important. You see people, like you said, they become complacent. And then when the estate period time comes, we have clients that both parents passed away and they still have the first parent who passed away as beneficiary. So especially when spouses or older spouses pass away, the one spouse gets stymied. And we have to tell the heirs, like, listen, you got to check his beneficiary designations, make sure they're updated. And that is a big issue. So you should just go in, go into your retirement account, check out your life insurance, just go through and do a beneficiary check. Make sure it's the way you want it to be. It's absolutely important.
There's a lot of times I visit with people that think they've updated their beneficiaries and they say, oh, I'm going to go online. I'm going to get it taken care of then. Let's just get an account open. And then we have to go back through and we find that, hey, FYI, you still don't have a beneficiary. In fact, about an hour ago, I had one of my good buddies, he sent me a note saying, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I just need 5 minutes. Stepfather passed away. He had told him, he had gone over everything with them, said, hey, do you have everything set up, beneficiaries? Oh, yeah, it's all done. Well, guess what? They find out there were no beneficiaries on anything. Now they've got to go get a probate attorney. They've got to spend all the time, energy. And Adam, we talked about this a couple of years ago in depth. Talking about the estate planning aspect of things. Mm-hmm. And these are just easy, low-hanging fruit things to do to make sure that your legacy intent is exactly what you want. And we hate to talk about our mortality. We hate to think about life insurance, about dying, but beneficiaries is just one of those easy things. Put it down. If you're doing all this hard work, you're accumulating these funds and you're being a prudent, good steward of assets, but yet we neglect that so often. So that's something easy that each and every person should be able to go do.
Well, it's so crazy. I mean, most people watching this, I know from the data of the recent survey I just asked a bunch of folks here to fill out, are parents, right? They're people who have either minor or adult children. And a big reason why they're watching this channel is to be good stewards of their wealth so that they can provide for these folks. And it's such a totally unnecessary own goal if you end up being good about putting all the money away, but you screw up the beneficiary part of it, right? You guys are nodding sadly as I'm saying this. Yeah.
It's warm fuzzy season. It's warm fuzzy season. In other words, if you're going to have an estate planning conversation or want to bring it up, this is the time to do it, right? Parents sometimes are standoffish about providing data and they let the estate documents talk for them. And cold dead documents do not speak well. Mm-hmm. So you've got to make sure that, now is the warm fuzzies. Everybody's had a little bit more eggnog than they probably should have. You can, as a child, even have these conversations with your parents, like, tell me a little bit about your estate plan, Mom. I just want to understand, there's just more conversations that happen around holiday time, and that's part of your year-end checklist. Maybe it's the wine, maybe it's, memories, whatever it is, use it. Because you do need to know. The estate plan is mostly communication. The documents are estate planning attorneys and working with a financial advisor that can help you understand them. But for the most part, it's communication. And around holiday time is the conversation starter. And, that's good sort of a strategy from an estate plan.
While the vibes are good and the people are there, act while the iron's hot. Totally good advice. Hey, so I want to ask now about gifting, which is somewhat related, right? Which is end of the year is when you can, if you haven't made any gifts that you want to make this year, you can still get them in before the January 1st deadline. So if you can talk about that process, but also related to it, I want to bring in one more retirement thing where there's something out there called a child Roth IRA, right? Where you can set up IRAs for your kids, your grandkids, or really any kid that you care about, right? And this is a custodial account where money can be put in it while the kids are young. And the beauty of a Roth, right, is the fact that everything grows tax-free and was withdrawn tax-free. So the sooner you can start that, the more you're letting that kid enjoy the magic of compounding over their lives. So if you could talk about that as well, that'd be great.
Yeah, Mona, we can certainly address that. I think we're having a ton of conversations around gifting, and it can be with people that are just looking at, hey, do I want to gift this when I pass, or is there a better utilization of the funds to my heirs if they take the funds earlier? And so this is something that we're seeing more commonly. There's a handful of ways to do it. You can gift directly to them. If you did gift splitting, so you could do, if you're married, if you're single, you can do $18,000 per person each year. If you are married, you could do 36, so 18 apiece. And that's a way that you could actually utilize a little bit more each and every year. There's other ways. There's donor advised funds. There are also private charitable foundations that creates a little bit more legwork. Donor advised funds are really easy. You could go to Fidelity, set that up. Then they guarantee and check that it's a 501c3. You're not having to go get tax forms from multiple places. And you can look at it up to specific limits on what the impact from a savings on taxes would be. We see those used quite often. If somebody has a really big tax bill, they have a big liquidity event, a large bonus, they're charitably inclined, and next year maybe doesn't look like they're going to make nearly as much money, they go ahead and kind of pre-fund that or bundle those contributions that they're going to do. And that's a great advantage to them from a tax perspective. They don't have to gift it in a donor advised fund or a private charitable foundation each year. They could say, okay, over 5 years, I'm going to give X amount, but I'm going to put all that money in today to get that tax burden down some.
Hey, Dave, I'm sorry, that's a donor advised fund? What's the word there?
Correct. Donor advised fund. So you may hear or see it as DAF, but donor advised fund is probably the more commonly used, and it's easy to set up. Private charitable foundation, you're going to need some legwork with an attorney. You're going to need to create, you're going to have some taxation, issues, or not issues. It's going to create an additional tax return, small things like that you have to be mindful of.
The other thing we're seeing too, Adam, and I'm sure Danny's overwhelmed with them this year, is qualified charitable distributions from IRAs. So if you're age 70 and a half and older, and you want to make your tax-free donations from an IRA to qualified charity, that can satisfy either your entire RMD or part of it. So you have up to 100,000 a year, but they're indexed for inflation. So 2024, it's 105,000. But we all have clients that they come in with their list of charities that are going to come directly out of their IRAs directly to the charities. And those qualified charitable distributions, they don't count as income. I mean, you can't deduct it, but it reduces your RMD.
Right, so but it reduces your RMD. So yeah, exactly. You're not getting taxed.
Yeah, so we have a lot of clients. We have a lot more that have been doing these, especially when the market's so good this year and they're way above and they're like, gosh, I have so many great charities. Well, let's talk about it. It's got to be done very specifically through the custodian. You can't just do it yourself. You're sort of hands off. You put the instructions, the checks go out from your IRA. There's a way to do it through your custodian, but they're easy to do. And you might decide that going forward that, I don't have to do all of it, but maybe there is some that I want to do to charity and reduce my required minimum distribution liability. There's a really great way to do it, and it's become very popular.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's great. All right. So, hey, real quick to the idea of that child Roth. Just curious, do you guys? I mean, to me, that seems like a really good idea. Does it to you? Are there better vehicles to use than that?
That's a great. My daughter, when she was started at there's a supermarket chain out here called HEB, and she started as a cashier.
They're everywhere in Texas. Even I know that in California.
Right, and a packer. Right. And we set up a custodial Roth with all the Gen Zs and all the young ones. Other brokers tell them to set up tax deferred accounts. We're telling them to do Roth 401k, Roth IRA. So I started her early with a custodial Roth. So yes, if you have a child that maybe works in your home office, and makes earned income up to the limits, absolutely can do a custodial IRA, right, Danny? It's a great way to do it.
Yeah. No, I think it is a great way. So we do see people who have younger children as well who utilize these. They bring them into the business. They have them do marketing or different small jobs. They may sweep the floor, but as long as you can, you're under the IRS guidelines, it's a great tool to utilize that. One other way we're seeing people kind of get around this a little bit is potentially overfunding a 529 account. The Secure Act 2.0 allows for now $35,000 can actually be moved from that 529 to a Roth IRA. There are a couple stipulations. The account has to be open within for at least 15 years, and those contributions need to have been deposited 5 years or more. So there are stipulations. You can only convert up to 35,000 of it. But if you are somebody who is pre-funding many different areas, you're thinking about a good utilization of funds. If you overfunded that a tad bit, that may be a really nice way to actually go ahead and put more money into a Roth further down the road. I do have concerns that that's a long ways away. Like I have young children, it could take a while before they could actually physically see that. And obviously tax codes can change, but currently that could be a really nice tool.
Yeah, I mean, to give a kid a Roth with 35,000 in it by the time they're 15, that's a good start in life.
Real life example. My daughter started her Roth when she just got her Social Security number in 1998. I literally set up the Roth her 529 that time, and had funded it for $600 a month for 13 years, 15 years. She got a full ride to Emory, and now she needed some, but every year we're moving money from that 529 into her now adult Roth.
That's great.
That started with the custodial Roth. So not everybody can use it, but it's definitely fine. And while you're talking about kids, you're a grandparent, you can go ahead and gift into your grandchild's 529 plan for 2024.
Yep.
$18,000 a person, $36,000 for married couples, right? So you want to go ahead and you want to do something nice for your grandkids, but you don't want to buy them the latest G.I. Joe. I'm aging myself with the Kung Fu grip. You go ahead and you can, what is this, Grandpa? This is like socks. Yeah, but you'll thank me later, right? You can go ahead and gift into a 529 for your grandchildren. I think that's a great idea for the holidays, and that may be part of your gifting strategy.
All right, I completely agree. All right, gentlemen, so we're beginning to come up on the hour here. Is there anything else important that I haven't asked you about yet that you think is a material part of the year-end planning process?
I think there's a couple things. The main thing that we have, and outside of probably that really low-hanging fruit, is the HSA. If you have a health savings account, make sure that you're maxing that out. You can put $4,150 for an individual for 2024. You can do $8,300 for a family. This is one of the best accounts that's out there. It has a triple tax benefit. Funds go in tax-free, grow tax-free, assuming you use those for medical expenditures later in life, or even now, you're going to pull that out tax-free. The one mistake people make with these is they confuse it with a flexible spending account. We want to make sure that if you're going to put those funds in, and you have the ability, pay any medical expenses out of pocket, go ahead and put those funds aside, invest those for the long term, and think about what you will use later in life. Healthy View Services, Fidelity, they all do very in-depth studies, and they say that the average 65-year-old couple will spend between $350,000 and $400,000 just on medical expenses. So premiums, deductibles, out-of-pocket expenses, these all that adds up. And so if you can have a tool that's just as more tax efficient than anything else out there, utilize it. Now, here's the problem. Not everybody has access to it. You have to be on a high deductible health plan. And if you are gearing up towards retirement, you're close to Medicare age or you're over it, you have to stop 6 months prior to starting on Medicare, or they could disqualify those contributions that you've made. But in general, a great tool.
Okay, so personal interest here, have a very high deductible healthcare plan. If I want to be able to use the full $8,300 for my family next year, is this pre-tax income that I'm putting towards this by January 1st the year before?
It depends how you have it set up with payroll. If you're running it through payroll, if you're employed by someone, most plans are beginning to offer these health savings accounts. You may be able to choose one or the other, the flexible spending or health savings. But that flexible spending, as Richard was mentioning, you're going to have to spend, where the health savings, we're going to roll that over. So Adam, if you don't have that set up personally to come through payroll, what you can do is you can go set up one on the side. You make sure you notate that as you're filing your taxes, and that way you get the deduction at that point in time.
All right. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go double check with my account right now to see if we've got this in place. I do not think we do.
We have a high deductible plan for the IRS, Publication 969. So there's a definition of what a high deductible plan is, but these are great accounts because they're retirement 401ks. as Danny and I always preach everyone, don't use it. Put the money in and hold it for retirement. It's yet another retirement savings account. If you don't, flexible spending, that's fine. But there's a reason why it's called health savings, not health spending account, right? It's for you to allocate it. You usually will have a choice of mutual funds, and you can then look at it in retirement and pay your Medicare Part B premiums, some of your long-term care insurance costs. There's a formula to figure that out, but there's ways to pull money out of that completely tax-free in retirement when you're probably really going to need it. So let that money, if possible, accumulate over time. And to Danny's point, if you haven't maxed it out by this year and you can do more by the end of the year into your health savings account.
All right. I just like that general point of do more by the end of the year. So, gentlemen, we'll start wrapping it up here. If there's anything else you want to, I'll give you a chance before we wrap. If there's anything else you want to put out there, to put out there. But first off, thank you for doing this. Such an important topic. I think such an overlooked one. And as we talked about at the beginning, there's no good reason not to do this stuff, right? And you've just reiterated for me during this conversation, there's so many of these things that I'm familiar with, but that I realize that they kind of fall off my radar during the year, right? So, most people watching, I think, would absolutely benefit from a conversation with a good financial planner like you guys who understands all this stuff. If you'd like to talk with the folks there at RIA, easy to do that. Just go fill out the short form at thoughtfulmoney.com. You'll be matched with them. Only takes you a couple seconds to fill out the form. They'll reach out. They'll schedule one of these consultations with you. They're totally free. If you decide you like the guys and want to work further with them going forward, fantastic. That's your own decision, but that's certainly possible if that's what you decide you want to do. But most importantly, just get the information and make smart decisions here. All right. Danny, Richard, thank you so much. Any parting bits of advice for folks watching here?
No, just remember retirement is very overwhelming. I would take it one step at a time. It's all about the small behaviors that you're creating. And, start small. You'll see it start to get bigger and bigger and bigger over time. Don't get discouraged if you feel like you haven't done enough. It's never too late.
All right. And this on retirement, real quick. We have on our calendar coming up relatively soon, guys, to do another one of these discussions, but to do a real deep dive into retirement planning. I know you guys have a fantastic presentation that you've honed over the years that really gives folks a really good overview of everything they should be considering. So I just wanted to flag for users that is coming at some point in the future. When we have a date actually locked, folks, I'll let you know on this channel. Richard, any concluding points here?
Financial health and wellness are connected, right? The future of financial planning is every financial planner like us will have a nutritionist in our office because they're so linked as far as health and wealth, right? Look at the new, we want to make America healthy, right? Mm-hmm. Think about what your financial wellness means to you, right? Low debt ratios, higher savings, diversification of accounts. If you go to our website, Real Investment Advice, type in financial guardrails. We have all kinds of rules that we've learned from the wealthiest clients over the last 30 years that can help you understand rules of getting a mortgage, getting personal debt. They're tough rules, but we create them so that you can generate wealth and command your situation. And that creates wellness and security for you and your family. So take a look at that.
All right. Very well said. Well, gentlemen, thanks so much. Folks watching, if you would like to show your appreciation for Richard and Danny coming on and giving us so much valuable advice, please do that by hitting the like button and then clicking on the red subscribe button below, as well as that little bell icon right next to it. And again, if you'd like to schedule a consultation to go through your year-end planning with one of the financial advisors endorsed by Thoughtful Money, just go to thoughtfulmoney.com. Richard and Danny, can't thank you enough, boys. Look forward to seeing you again here doing this, hopefully quite soon on the retirement planning side of things. Really appreciate you joining me.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks for having us, Adam.
All right. And everybody else, thanks so much for watching.